Hey, 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 hey. It's your girl, and welcome to Real Talk with T Holmes. Today, our motivation will start out with the embracement of grace and mercy. Today it's a whole different vibe for me. A new mindset, new energy, new focus. And so I would like to embrace you in order to go forward in this week. Never take anything or anyone for granted. God give us new grace and new mercy daily. The grace and mercy that was granted today was different than yesterday. The grace and mercy that will be granted on tomorrow will be different than today. So I hope that you allow that to sink in, and in the midst of it sinking in, be open to new opportunities, new challenges in life, because the challenges is only going to make you greater for everyday life. So as we go into our segment today, last week I talked about no weapon formed against me shall prosper. And we opened it up with a young lady, Latoya Wilson. And so as she gave us the bitter end of life, today she will give us the new grace and mercy side of life. Thank you. We have talked about no weapon formed against me shall prosper last week with part one. Today we will talk about the grace and mercy side. So we have Latoya Wilson, founder and owner of LR Wilson Consulting LLC, plus size freelance model, ghostwriter, lead media correspondent, columnist for Pretty Women Hustle magazine, and Court Team. As I introduced her last week from Minnesota to Nashville, Tennessee, Latoya, welcome back.
Hi, Tammy. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be back on your platform, and
Well,
I'm ready
thank,
to stay.
thank you. Look, toast. Look, I'm glad you have your wine, honey. Okay, so I'm gonna reiterate just for the ones who may have missed last week, just to recap some information. Okay,
Yes,
so it was a 16-year-old mother, gave birth to a baby girl, moved away to California. Correct?
yes, that's
Okay, got
correct.
married. In the midst of getting married, you said you stayed married for 1 year.
I mean, yeah, on paper, yeah.
Yeah, okay. But to me, the most exciting part of that was even after giving birth and moving away to California, like you finished high school and you gave your mother that promise and you granted that. So that made chills come to my body. Okay,
Absolutely.
so you come back to Mississippi, correct?
Yep. I
Greenville. And if I'm
yes.
not mistaken, I'm sorry. After I thought about it, I think my mother-in-law, um, fiance was from there. He passed almost 2 years ago, but I
Oh,
think he was from Greenville, Mississippi as well too. So
okay. I mean, it could be everybody from the same location. So
okay, so you come back and you said you brought your ex husband now,
yes.
but you brought him with you from California, right?
No, I brought him with me from Mississippi to Minnesota.
Oh, okay, 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 okay,
Yes, yes,
okay.
brought him with me.
So I think we stopped at the divorce. The divorce is on the table, right?
Yes,
Okay. So I'm just recapping a little bit for anybody who may have missed episode one. Okay. So
absolutely.
you had a daughter going into this relationship. Your
Yes,
husband and you birth gave birth to three young men, correct?
correct.
Okay. You
Yes.
have another baby girl, a bonus girl.
Yes, my
Okay.
bonus baby. Yes.
Okay. Look, we're not going to call her the bonus babies on the set. She your baby too.
Oh, I mean, I know that's right, girl.
Right. Okay, so we're not gonna call her the bonus baby. We're gonna she your baby too. Okay,
Yes,
so the marriage had been rocky for a little while, correct?
correct. It has been rocky for a while, and it's absolutely no one's primary fault. We both have fault in the demise of the marriage. So I'm woman enough to claim that I had my faults and errors and everything in the marriage as well. So it didn't work out. We tried, it didn't work out, and then we ended up in court. and we got a divorce, went our separate ways. And during that time, prior to the actual divorce, I went through a lot of emotional trauma, where and this is also a recap for those of you who weren't able to get it all last time, but a lot of emotional trauma where I used drugs and alcohol to ease that pain. And it's only through the grace and mercy of God Himself that I'm here sitting with you today to tell this story to someone that may be going through the same thing.
Okay, well, I thank you so much for being very transparent and open with that. I know, give us a little bit information about the tequila challenge again, because I made a joke with that with my Rochelle this week. I said, I'm not taking no painkillers, but I got some Advil PM and some Stella Rose, and honey, that'll put me right on to sleep.
Right. So, how channeling, the name of a blog that I started was called Channeling Tequila. And it came about because myself and one of my girlfriends was walking to Caribou Coffee, and I was trying to say, like, I really need to talk about my life. I really need to talk about what's going on. And I want to be transparent and I want to be responsible for my behaviors or whatever, but I wanted to be real and I wanted to be honest. And I was like, I need a catchy name though. And so we're walking and she goes, well, you like tequila? I was like, oh, girl, I do like tequila. She's like, and you do your most, like, you do your best when you are like trying to get out of your mode. You have your tequila, so you channel that other person in. And then she was like, you could just call it channeling tequila. I was like, oh my God, that was amazing. Because that's exactly what I was doing. I was channeling all that tequila, girl, and those, those sleeping pills and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff, painkillers, as I was trying to get through it. And that's how I started writing that blog, and it's called Channeling Tequila. It's pretty much everything. Like, it's out there. I do a lot of poetry and spoken word too. So any type of pain that I can put into writing to express myself, it's on there. So if you guys want to know the real deal outside of this interview, go and look at Channeling Tequila on Facebook, and it's channelingtequila.blogspot.com on the internet.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna make sure I tune into that as soon as the show is over with today.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about I as a woman, I do appreciate you saying um, that you take fault or responsibility for whatever your actions were in a marriage. And
Absolutely.
again, you can't always blame one person because it takes two to make a marriage,
That's
and
correct.
it takes both the man and the wife to make the marriage work. And
Correct.
one thing that I've learned being married, I'm on 17 years, is that both parties have to give 100%. You can't
Yes.
go 50-50, 60-40, 70-30. You have to be 100 the whole time.
Yes.
So let me ask you this. Okay, so you take responsibility for your actions. Were your ex-husband, was he open into taking responsibility of his action as well?
Not. I can only speak to the fact that we had conversations about both our parts in the marriage. And to be quite honest, I can only speak for myself as well as claim what I claim because I was the one that was, in the midst of it all. At the end of the day, although we separated and were divorced, whatever, at the end of the day, we found a way to come back together and to rectify a lot of wrongs that were done in the marriage. And like I said, we got married really young. So for speaking for myself, I had never lived life. So during that time, it was a transition time for me to literally grow up. I had to grow up although I'm 46 now, but during that time, that was a time for me during the trials and tribulations of the marriage, of the divorce, the things that were happening to contribute to the demise of the marriage. That was a whole lot that I needed to recognize about myself. I needed to accept a lot of things about myself that I was not old enough and mature enough to do at that time.
Okay, and I think that's probably just part of just being lost
Oh,
because I
girl,
can
yes.
attest, yes, I can attest for myself that Even now, I'm in a my mindset now of where I'm at in life is
Hmm.
just trying to tell me who are you.
Yeah.
Choices and decisions that you make.
Yeah.
Sometimes I look back and be like, girl, that's not you. However, I'm at a point in my life that I must deal with it. And in the midst of dealing with choices and decisions, sometimes you putting, other people in the middle, and when other people are in the middle, it brings about hurt and other things that's it's not the intention.
Absolutely.
But
It's funny you're saying this because earlier today I was thinking about intentional hurt
mhm.
and when you hurt someone non-intentionally.
Mhm.
And I was talking, well, to myself, literally, as I was washing dishes. I was thinking, like, you don't go out in the world intentionally. Well, most of us, because there are some crazies out there that do intentionally
Mhm.
hurt. But for the most part, we don't go out into the world to intentionally hurt people, especially people that we love, especially people that are within our inner circle. Those people are the ones that we should cherish, and
Correct.
we should, and it should be vice versa. At the same time, when you're trying to find yourself and you're trying to validate what it is you're doing and who you are, and then you put all these outside entities into your circumstance, that causes a whole lot of more bullshit. I mean, just quite frankly. And you don't know how to tread through that because you've never been in that place before, and you're still defining who you are. You're still trying to figure out, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? Wow, we have all this stuff together. Like, we had a mortgage, we had bills, we had kids, all those things come into play. And then you think about the selfishness of your acts at that time. Not when you're in the midst of doing everything, but after the fact, when it all hits you, you know what I mean? And you
Mhm.
weigh everything against each other. And you think, am I doing the things that I did because yes, I did them. Yes, I accept full responsibility for it all, but where's the validation in it? The validation came in not in the act itself alone, but as for me being able to take responsibility for everything that I've done and everything that I continue to strive to do better at. So that's, for me, that's the validation, and that's the grace and mercy part of it all as well, because we are not our own. I don't care
Correct.
what you believe in, what religious thing, and I'm open arms. Do you? I love everybody. Do your thing. I don't get in people's business. But at the same time, at some point you have to look back at yourself and
Correct.
see what role you played in everything. And if you're not honest and transparent about it, there's no way you can grow.
Correct.
That growth comes in when you're honest with yourself.
Correct. And being honest with yourself is a major factor before you even be honest with anyone else.
Oh,
If you
yes,
can't be honest with yourself, it's no way I can tell you the truth.
yes, yes,
And so
yes.
that's one thing I've been dealing with in the last couple of months is just looking myself in the mirror and like, Timmy, let's talk. You know,
Yeah. And
some
it's up,
feelings,
you
some
know.
feelings that I've had that I've never expressed. And in that case, what I've learned last week about myself um, is that for me now, if I put it in the atmosphere and I speak it, I got to deal with it. If I
Oh, yeah.
sweep it up on the rug and don't say nothing about it, it's like a no brainer. So
Mhm.
now if I speak it, then okay, Tim, you got to deal with this. You got to own up to it. And if you
Yeah.
own up to it, you done your part.
Yes.
And I think it's
So,
just part of not just women, but men too. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. But in my opinion, we are the first ones to bring it up. The ugly, because women deal with things on an emotional level, and so for me personally, it eats me up. Like, it eats
Hmm.
me up. I don't do drama. I don't do negativity. And I'm glad you talked about putting it out in the atmosphere and sweeping it under the rug, because sweeping it under the rug only brings you to a place of you'll need to revisit that when it's time.
Correct.
So it has to be right when you put it in the atmosphere. You have to be ready for what the atmosphere is going to bring back to you. What the universe says, hey, it's time for this. It's time for you to deal with it. It's going to be some ugly shit. I mean, people going to know. People going. People are going to know because you're going to be truthful. You're going to put yourself out there. You're going to transform yourself into the person that you want to become, which is how my whole business came about, my empowerment life coaching business. That's how that all came about, by me just being transparent and hearing other people like, oh, yeah, I went through that. Oh,
Hmm.
wow, you did that. Like, you look like you got it all together. Like, you have everything. And people don't know, like, the shit you had to tread through with them same boots on that you got to wash off and come in and show them, you know?
Right. So I definitely understand that because people say my time, you look like you got all your shit together. No, don't let this makeup and these high heels fool you. You know, because I should be on book 10 right now. Look, sending you the editing part, let you looking over it and correcting whatever needs to be corrected. However, throughout all them challenges of life, I've had to stand on God's word and pray my
Yes,
way through.
yes,
But before we go any farther on the validation part,
yes,
um, I asked you a question last week before the show started, and I want you to be as transparent as you can. Follow your
absolutely.
heart. You put in your bio that at one point in time you had attempted to commit suicide, right?
Yes.
Can you give me a little bit about that? And then once, how was it for you mentally and emotionally? And then when you did begin to deal with how you was feeling, like the aftermath of it.
Yes. Okay, so the suicidal ideations came in when I was drinking and doing painkillers over and over and over and over again. I was at such a low point in my life that I was like why am I even still here? Nobody needs me. My marriage is over. Of course I played a part in it, and I was to a point where I did not understand my purpose. I really didn't care about anything else. Me going through that cycle day in, day out. I was like a robot, you know. And then I would never forget every time. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me back up one time. One time I was driving on the road to my house, and there's a road and there's a river by the road to my house. And I was thinking I could just drive off right here and go in the river, and nobody will and it'll be all over and done with. Those were some of the darkest times of my depression. And I didn't even know I was depressed until my gynecologist told me I was depressed, because we had a relationship for years. Obviously, they all up in your business.
Yeah.
So they know you better than you know yourself pretty much. And she was also my OB doctor for my 15-year-old. So I've known her for years, and I came in and she started asking me all these questions one time. And I was like, why is she asking me this? Because it was out of her normal routine, but she was still herself. And she said, I knew it. She's like, you're depressed, and then told her about everything that was going on. And then I continued to do the pills. And so she prescribed me trazodone, which is a depression medication, and it puts you to sleep. So you don't really feel anything, because
Hmm.
you wake up. I mean, you go to sleep, all your problems are gone, right? And then you wake up and they come back. The last time I got ready to do trazodone and shots of tequila, and I was thinking, okay, this is it. I'm going to go ahead and be done with life itself. My son at the time, he's 15 now. He was probably 12 or 13 then. And he walked in my bedroom and just hugged me. He said, Mom, I love you so much. And that moment was the moment that I was done with it all, because God came to me and said, you have a purpose. You
Hmm.
are supposed to be just doing something more. And although you feel like you're alone, and when everything's going on, divorce literally feels like a funeral. If you've never been divorced, I mean my real divorce, the real marriage.
Right. Hmm.
If you've never been divorced, it's equivalent to a funeral. You're losing a whole person, a whole life, a whole identity. That identity that I talked about in part one, where you are together so much that you lose yourself. because you're busy trying to make sure they're okay, trying to make sure the family's okay, and you never really understand who you are. But the turning point was that moment when my son walked into the bedroom and told me that he loved me so much. And that wasn't nothing but God, because he's a kid that's always on the go and always doing stuff, and he expects for me to be there as well as his dad. That's all he's ever known.
Correct.
So that moment was the turning point for me. I was going to therapy, but I wasn't reporting to her that about the drinking and the drugs, because I know she'll have to report that. You know what I
Correct.
mean? She would have to, she's a mandated reporter, and I have a kid at home. I mean, I ain't all the way stupid. I was depressed, but I ain't stupid.
Correct.
so, so I that moment was the turning point for me. One of the very turning points. And I knew then that I had a bigger purpose in life and that I needed to pull my shit together, because it was more than me I was living for. You
Okay.
know,
So let me stop you right here, Latoya, because
absolutely.
I'm not no emotional person. But girl,
Yes.
I'm over here in tears. So let me back up just a little bit.
Yes.
Because as a mother, you have kids.
Yes.
Of course, they are your world. You know, mothers make shit happen. Nothing against the dads, because there's a lot of great dads out there that's making shit happen every day.
Right.
But that was God that intervened right at that moment. Because,
Oh,
of course, Satan had attacked your mind, he attacked your
oh, girl.
heart,
Yes.
you know, your emotional side. And then for your baby to come in and say, I love you,
Just
like it
out of
just got to show how God will just step up and step in right in the midst of time. Right in
yes.
the midst of time. So
Yes.
look, I thank your baby for even just listening, because he probably didn't even realize that it was God that was sending him in to save his mom at that time.
Mm-hmm. And
Okay, so
he's
that's
16 and teen, so they ain't really trying to be all up under you and stuff. you
correct.
know.
Correct. Because I have a 12-year old now. So that means this was just fresh.
Yes.
This was just 3 years ago.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So from that day when baby boy comes in and you realize, okay, I do have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put this purpose to use, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so you put the purpose to use. And then what was your first challenge to validating yourself? Like start feeling good about yourself?
Hmm. Well, the first challenge was literally getting out of the bed and staying out of the bed. So not just go, because I was going to work, coming home, getting into bed, and that was when I was going to work. Because a lot of times I wasn't even going. People covered for me, covered my caseload and everything for me because they knew I was going through a hard time. And I'm grateful for them as well. Like, I'm so grateful because I really should have been fired, because I was not there doing my job. But I had people there that knew about me, cared enough about me to cover things for me so that I could get well, and literally getting out of the bed and doing more than my normal, just going to work, coming back home. I literally had to push myself to get out of my bed, walk to, like, go to the store, or go out to eat after work, or go get my son, we go out to dinner, things like that. So just the little things that help push yourself out of depression. That's what I had to do. And getting out of the bed was the key thing. That, because as soon as you get in that bed, it's like it's a sinkhole and you don't want to do anything else but be there. So that's the first step to getting out of it. And then once I started doing that and started actually living life again, I started to travel, because we always travel together. So that's my travel buddy. We always have fun together. We always went everywhere on vacation and stuff together. So I started traveling by myself. Um, that was great. And then that first year, I came to Nashville. Because
Okay.
I had been to Nashville earlier when I was younger with my mom, not younger, but like my 20s or whatever.
Mhm.
And I had been to Nashville on a family trip, but I never experienced Nashville like that because I had the kids with me
Correct.
at the time. So my first trip after my depression was for my birthday in 2017, 16, 17, something like that. Was the first time I came to Nashville, and my good friend Rochelle. right, open up her home to me. You know, we're childhood friends since we were like 6 years
Mm-hmm.
old. So she opened her home to me, and then when I tell you that was one of the best vacations I have ever had because I was with my sisters, you know.
Mm-hmm. And
This-
let me
you
say
go-
this: I love Rochelle. So when you say, and I've only been to her home once, but when you say that she opened up your home, I know that it was that welcoming feeling. I'm sure her husband and her kids
Yeah,
embraced you all as well too, because those are the type of people they are. And
yes,
really, I wouldn't expect anything any less.
right.
But the fact that you had somebody to go to, that plays a major part, because
Yeah,
sometimes you have and you feel like you're lost and you really feel like you don't have nobody to understand you. And then that's one of my problems, that I won't necessarily open up to anybody. I kind of talk to Rochelle some, and she'll listen, and then she'll just kind of fill in the blank of, of what it
yeah,
is that she think I may want to say. And
yes.
so sometimes I be having to come back and be like, "Girl, I love you." But sometimes I be feeling like, you know, everybody don't understand me, you know,
Yeah,
and being misunderstood is, not a good feeling.
yeah.
However,
Your
I think,
situation is
uh
not
huh.
like somebody else's too. I'm sorry to mean to cut you off.
Oh,
Go
that's
ahead.
okay.
I was going to say your situation is also not like somebody else's, but at the
Hmm.
same time, it's the same, if that makes sense, because the dynamics are different. You know, it kind
Correct.
of just depends on where you are in your growth, where you are in your empowerment, where you are in your acceptance of the circumstances as well as the role you played within it, you know.
Okay. So I must ask you, during
Sure.
your time of depression, when you on this deep, deep end, where are you? Is the divorce final at this time?
No, it's not even final yet. It's just in the works, you know. It's right before the filing of the paperwork. So, and mind you, I didn't get divorced until like probably 2 years. This was like a 2 year process because I knew I wasn't ready. And I knew I wanted to keep doing as much as I could to get things back on track. It was a lot of proving myself, a lot of, trying to look back and say, okay, like we've had like 5 million good times versus these 3 or 4. I don't want to make light of the situation, but
That's
just
correct.
speaking, like we've had a lot of great times and only a few bad times, but those bad times were heavy enough to collapse the good times, if that
Mm.
makes sense. So this was even before we got divorced, like the final divorce stage and the paperwork and all of that. And when the paperwork was actually started, it took me months to like go through it, get it done because I still was not sure. And like I said in the first episode, I wasn't even sure when on the day of the divorce, like arriving to the courthouse, driving there, I had on meditation music. I was praying, like everything. So I wasn't sure even until probably the third hearing. And the only reason I was sure then because I just knew I just gave it to God and like whatever happens, happens.
Okay.
But at the time I was in the midst of trying to fix it when it needed, like I said, this was the worst, best thing that ever happened to me because I was able to figure out who I was and what needed to happen.
Yeah, and look, it's funny that you say that, because I had a client that watched that episode last week, and we was
Hmm.
talking about it, and she said, made mention of the worst best thing. I was like, I know, like it was funny, but it's true to it, because sometimes some things happen is for the best, even if you don't really want it. So you feel like it's the worst best thing that could
Yeah.
possibly happen to you. Okay, so during this time of the depression, when you on the deep end,
Hmm.
so was he embracing, like, was it times that he felt like that, let's pray together, or
Girl,
it was
no.
just,
No, no. He was done with my ass.
look, that ain't funny, but for you to say that like that, we both need to take a drink behind that one, girl.
Mm-mm. Honey, he was done. Like he was
Okay.
done.
So did
Um,
he was he aware of how depressed you were and
no,
the suicidal
no.
thoughts that you
Nobody was aware of how depressed I was except a very few people that I talked to, because in that, when you're going through stuff, you put up a wall. You don't want anybody in. You don't want them knowing your business. You don't want them coming in trying to give you no advice, trying to tell you nothing. A lot of people didn't even know what was going on.
Mhm.
So, and we've been together for so long that people was like, "Wait, what? That don't even seem right." Like, So when it finally happened, but no, during that time, he didn't know I was depressed or nothing. I was doing me, he was doing him, and really the only time we saw each other is probably when he came to get our son, or our son did something with him or whatever. But out, or if he came to the house for whatever. But during that time, girl, no, he was done. And we later I told him about it when we sat down and had a talk about everything. This was after the divorce, mind you. Then when we sat down and talked about everything, but I told him about the depression, about the alcohol, the drugs, like all of that stuff, because I needed to. It had to happen. And one other thing, when I was going through my depression, I don't know if people have ever seen demons or
Mhm.
anything, or spirits or whatever. I'm talking about the bad ones, not the good ones.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
right. During that
Satan, he coming to do his job.
Yes, yes, and he was sending all his soldiers, honey, all of
Mhm.
them. I would wake up and see demons, like figures in my room. I would wake up and I would be like hurting because they would be attacking me. So the next day I would be sore. I would have scratches. I don't know if people believe in that, but I do. And I believe in the devil, and I believe in God protecting us. But I also know that the devil cannot touch us unless God allow him to. So even he has to answer to God. So that was a test right there for me to be like, girl, you better get your shit together, because that scared the hell out of me. I would wake up and I couldn't move. My body couldn't move. My mouth, I can feel myself screaming for help, but nothing was coming out.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna fast forward
Yeah.
because I don't want us to run out of time like we did last week.
Oh,
Let's.
okay.
So the divorce is final.
Yes.
Okay, so the divorce is final. Latoya finds herself. She writes this book. She got this blog on. She's a freelance model. Okay, can you give us a quick version of once you found yourself, how you got into action of, honey, I'm beautiful. I love myself. Most importantly, I know God loves me, and I got to go forward with my life.
Yes. So once I figured out who I was and what it was I was supposed to be doing, my purpose, is when I started my life coaching business, my
Okay.
empowerment life coaching business. And it's called empowerment because you have to be able to pull out your inner self, to empower yourself to do everything that it is you want to do. um, I started going to model calls. I've always wanted to be a model, but of course I was too fat, too short, too this, too that. And then I went, put myself out there, went to a plus size model call, and I was called back. So from then on, I've been doing plus size modeling. My empowerment coaching is I help people, women and men, mostly women, but I've had some men too, to reach goals that they felt like they couldn't attain on their own. And that's personal life goals, professional life goals, whatever it is. There's a perfect plan for it all. Each person is individually given a plan. After that, I also had, well, not after that, but during that, I've written an empowerment journal. I have a monthly empowerment goals set that I've published as well. So there's a lot of things surrounding empowerment and being able to love yourself, love every part of you, because if you don't love you, nobody else can. You are the best person to love yourself. And once you show how you love yourself and how you want to be loved, if they cannot come into that realm with you, then they're not supposed to be there with you. But you have to be able to show love to yourself and give love to yourself in order to give it to somebody else. Thank you. Yes.
going through the same allocates of life.
Yes.
And I want to thank you so much for sharing, for even being brave enough to share.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so I know you had a new book to release on June 1st. Can you give
Yeah.
us a little information about that before we go?
Yes, before we pop off of here, I have the new How to Live an Empowered Life guide. And the guide is about, it's over 30 some pages, and there's a step in there for everything that you need, as well as some very thought-provoking, empowering questions that you really got to dig deep to answer. So
Okay.
that can be found on my website, www.lrwilson.net, as well as any other thing that you need. There's packages there. Also, there's other merchandise.
Okay, well, Latoya, I thank you for coming on. I look forward to work with you directly.
Thank
And
you.
as to the listeners, I want to leave you with this quote. First, know your worth. Second, control your emotions. And third, never settle. There you
Yeah.
have it, directly from T Home. Real Talk with T Holmes. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.